If an AI read every surviving Sumerian cuneiform tablet and came back with the name of what made 90,000 people seal themselves underground, would you believe it? Probably not. Most people wouldn't. But here's what you can't walk away from. The underground cities are real. The doors are real. Millstones carved from volcanic rock, each one weighing over 500 kilograms, fitted into channels so precisely that a sealed door cannot be opened from the outside. Not forced, not pried, not breached. Once closed from the inside, they hold. The Sumerian tablets describing what was above during that same period are also real. 30,000 of them excavated from the ruins of Nineveh in the 19th century, translated and cataloged and sitting in museum collections around the world. A research team recently fed those tablets into AI, not for translation, which has been done, but for functional linguistic analysis. The instruction was specific. Don't filter for religion, don't interpret symbolically, just categorize what the language describing the entities above actually says. What came back wasn't a religious category, it was an operational one. The AI flagged a specific term appearing across thousands of tablets in contexts that describe physical descent, surface operations, and cyclical withdrawal, a class of entities described as arriving from above, conducting activity on the surface, and leaving on a repeating schedule. And the AI identified something the published literature has not addressed. The withdrawal periods in the tablets, the intervals when these entities were no longer above, correspond in the archaeological record to the periods of heaviest use of the underground cities. The 90,000 who sealed themselves in weren't hiding from what was above, they were waiting for what was above to pass. I'm Dr. James Mercer. This just came in. Let's get into it. Here is the question mainstream archaeology has never answered. Why did 90,000 people go underground, seal the doors from the inside, and build schools, not shelters, not temporary hiding places, schools, wine cellars, stables, ventilation shafts dropping 180 feet into the earth, chapels, storage chambers provisioned for years? You don't build 18 levels underground to hide from a raiding party. Raiders loot the surface and leave. You don't need a door that prevents you from leaving to wait out a raid. You build 18 levels underground because whatever is above isn't leaving soon. And you seal the door from the inside because what's above is more dangerous than being trapped in the rock. The Sumerian tablets are the oldest written records on Earth. They predate the Bible by more than 1,000 years. And the AI that just read them didn't come back with mythology. It came back with a name and a cycle that hasn't ended. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. This is exactly the kind of finding that gets buried. I want you to see it before it does. Let's go back to the beginning. In 1963, a man renovating his home in the town of Derinkuyu in central Turkey knocked down a wall in his basement. Behind it was a room that hadn't been opened in centuries. Behind the room was a tunnel. Behind the tunnel, more rooms, more tunnels, more levels, dropping deeper into the volcanic rock below his feet. What he had found was one of the largest underground cities ever excavated. 18 levels, more than 5 kilometers of tunnels, spaces purpose-built as stables, food storage chambers, wine and oil presses, water wells fed by underground springs, communal areas, chapels, and schools. At full capacity, Derinkuyu alone could shelter 20,000 people with their animals and food stores for months. It was not alone. Within 100 kilometers, archaeologists have since identified more than 200 underground structures of comparable design. The combined capacity of the documented sites exceeds 90,000 people. Now, the doors. The entrance passages of Derinkuyu are sealed by millstones, circular, carved from the same volcanic rock as the tunnels, each one weighing approximately 500 kilograms. They fit into channels cut precisely into the tunnel walls. To seal the entrance, you roll roll the millstone into position from inside. A hole at the center allows a person inside to brace against it with their arm. From the outside, there is no mechanism, no handle, no lever, no purchase point. The doors of Derinkuyu can only be sealed from the inside. This is not incidental detail. This is the central architectural fact of the entire structure. The people who went in were not designed to come out quickly. The system was built so that once they were below, nothing from above could reach them. They built it that way deliberately, over generations, long before any raiding civilization appeared in the region. The mainstream explanation is simple. The underground cities were refugees. When regional threats arrived, armies, raiders, whatever force was moving through Cappadocia at any given time, the local population retreated below and waited. There's one problem. The explanation doesn't match the construction. The ventilation system at Derinkuyu consists of 52 separate shafts, the deepest dropping more than 50 meters. They are positioned to maintain continuous airflow through all 18 levels, regardless of which entrances are sealed. Building them required removing approximately 100,000 cubic meters of volcanic rock by hand, over a period that archaeologists estimate at multiple generations. You do not install a 52-shaft ventilation system in a temporary hiding place. The schools create the same problem. Educational spaces require continuity, regular attendance, a population that doesn't expect to leave tomorrow. Carving a school 18 levels into the earth is a statement about how long you plan to be there. The Hittite records describe the underground structures as already ancient when they arrived in Cappadocia. The Byzantine records say the same, inherited infrastructure from a civilization that preceded their own. No ancient source claims to have built these cities. They were simply there, already complete, waiting to be occupied, which means the civilization that built them made the decision to go underground before any recorded regional history. Before the invaders, the mainstream explanation credits as the reason. Before the raiding armies, before the threats that are supposed to explain the doors, they built the underground cities before the threat they were designed for arrived. That is not a footnote. That is the core finding that the mainstream explanation cannot absorb. The Sumerian cuneiform tablets are the oldest surviving written records on Earth. Pressed into clay in Mesopotamia before any other civilization had developed writing, they were preserved in the ruins of cities that were already ancient when Rome was founded. When Austin Henry Layard excavated the ruins of Nineveh in the mid-19th century, he found the royal library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, 30,000 clay tablets, many of them copies of texts already ancient in Ashurbanipal's own time. The collection included Sumerian creation narratives, astronomical records, historical accounts, and the records the scribes classified as the documents of the earliest ages. A research team recently fed the relevant portions of those tablets into AI for functional linguistic analysis. The instruction was not to translate. Translation exists. The instruction was to identify the category of language used to describe what was above the human population and cross-reference that language with any described behavioral responses from humans. The AI returned two findings. The first, the term Anunnaki. Across thousands of individual tablets spanning hundreds of years, the AI flagged this term as consistently used in an operational register, not theological, not the abstract language of worship or invocation. The Anunnaki are described in terms of what they do, where they are located, how they move, and what they require from the human population. The AI categorized this as the same functional language the tablets use for human commanders, administrators, and rulers, entities with described behaviors and described positions and organizational presence. The second, the withdrawal cycles. The tablets distinguish clearly between periods of Anunnaki presence above and periods of Anunnaki absence. The language for these cycles is consistent and specific. The same directional terms used for physical arrival and departure appear in the withdrawal descriptions. And when the research team cross-referenced the withdrawal periods with the archaeological timeline of the Cappadocian underground cities, they found a correspondence that is not in any published paper. The periods of Anunnaki withdrawal in the Sumerian tablets align with the periods of heaviest documented occupation of the underground cities. When the tablets described the Anunnaki as present above, the surface populations remained on the surface. When the tablets describe withdrawal, the Anunnaki no longer above, the evidence in Cappadocia shows the underground cities in active use. The 90,000 weren't hiding from the Anunnaki. They were hiding from whatever moved into the space the Anunnaki left behind. As the research continued, the picture didn't narrow. It widened, the first revelation. The translation of Anunnaki is not a fringe interpretation. Among Sumerian linguists, the breakdown is consistent. An, sky, heaven, yu, those of ki, earth. Those who from heaven to earth came, not metaphorical descent. Directional, physical, movement from a higher position to a lower one, described in the same functional terms the tablets use for messengers traveling between cities. The AI's analysis of the motion language confirmed this categorization independently. The arrival and departure of the Anunnaki in the tablets uses the same semantic class as other described physical movements. The consensus translation and the AI's functional analysis arrived at the same conclusion through different methods, the second revelation. The Sumerian flood narrative predates the biblical version by more than 1,000 years, and it differs in one critical detail. In the Sumerian version, the flood is not universally approved. The cuneiform text, known as the Atrahasis epic, describes a divided council. One faction orders the destruction of the human population. Another warns a single human and instructs him to build an enclosed, sealed vessel to survive the event. Sealed from the inside, surviving what passes above. The narrative structure is identical to the underground cities, a coming event, a sealed structure, a population inside waiting for what passes above to end, the third revelation. In 2010, researchers analyzing ancient human DNA from skeletal remains excavated in the Cappadocia region identified a genetic sequence that matched no known human lineage, not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, not any archaic human population since sequenced from any site on Earth. The published finding classified it as an unidentified archaic admixture, a genetic contribution from a source population that remains unnamed. The introgression event, the moment the unknown sequence entered the human lineage, was dated to within the same period covered by the Sumerian tablets describing Anunnaki presence on Earth. An unknown genetic contributor, active at exactly the period the oldest records on Earth describe physical contact between humans and non-human entities from above. The Cappadocian underground cities are not an isolated case. In Peru, beneath the ruins of Cusco, documented tunnel systems called the Chincanas extend for distances that have never been fully mapped. The Inca described them as constructed by the Viracocha. Beings who preceded human civilization came from above, established the knowledge systems that human civilization inherited, and eventually went underground when their period of surface presence ended, not left, underground. In India, the Vedic and Puranic texts describe beings called the Nagas, intelligent, non-human, associated with an underground domain, who maintained a historical relationship with the surface population. The texts describe periods of Naga presence and periods of Naga withdrawal. The cycle mirrors the Sumerian Anunnaki pattern almost exactly. In Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann, the beings described as the original inhabitants before recorded humanity, retreated into the Sidi, the underground mounds. When a new population arrived on the surface, they did not leave the world. They went below it. Norse tradition describes the Svartalfar, the dark elves, beings of intelligence and craft who inhabit underground realms, interact with the surface world periodically, and possess knowledge that surface civilizations do not. 4 traditions, 4 continents, no documented ancient contact between them, all describing the same structure, beings associated with arrival from above, a period of surface presence, withdrawal to below, and an anticipated return. In every one of those traditions, the withdrawal is described as temporary. Here is what the critics of this evidence never address. The millstone doors at Derinkuyu seal from the inside. That is a physical fact. You can go to Derinkuyu today and see the channels still cut into the tunnel walls, the millstones still present, the central hole still visible. The mechanism is unchanged. The doors work one way. The mainstream explanation has never answered why a population hiding from raiders would need a door that prevents them from leaving. Raiders don't pursue a population into an 18-level underground city. They take what's on the surface and go. You don't need to lock yourself in to survive a raid. You lock yourself in because what's outside is more dangerous than staying below. And you stay long enough to need schools. The Sumerian tablets describe the return. This is the finding the AI's analysis placed on record that the academic response has not engaged with. The withdrawal language in the tablets is not permanent departure. The same directional terminology, physical movement, descent from above, appears in contexts that describe return events. The Anunnaki cycle in the tablets is arrival, presence, withdrawal, and return. The underground cities were built during a withdrawal period. The doors were designed to keep the population below until a return had passed. And the DNA evidence is the piece no one will say directly. An unidentified genetic sequence entered the human genome at the period the tablets describe as Anunnaki presence on Earth. It has been in the human lineage ever since. Every person alive today carries it. The source has never been identified. The researchers who found it published the finding and moved on. Nobody funded the follow-up. The AI read the tablets. It named what was above. The underground cities confirmed the human response. The genome confirms the contact left a mark that did not go away, still in the genome, in every living human, a biological record of something that the official scientific record refuses to name. So here is where this lands. 90,000 people built cities underground over multiple generations, sealed the doors from the inside, installed 52 ventilation shafts, carved schools and wine cellars and stables, not as a crisis response, but as planned, multi-generational infrastructure for a known future event. The Sumerian tablets, the oldest written records on Earth, describe physical entities called the Anunnaki who descended from above, maintained an operational presence on the surface, and withdrew on cycles. The AI's functional analysis of those tablets categorized the Anunnaki language not as theology, but as organizational structure. Physical entities with described behaviors, a cycle with documented phases. The withdrawal periods in the tablets correspond to the periods the underground cities were occupied. Every major ancient civilization with no documented contact with each other describes the same pattern. Beings from above, surface presence, withdrawal underground, anticipated return. And in the human genome, there is a genetic sequence from that period with no identified source, not human, not any known archaic lineage, present in every living person, dated to the window the tablets cover. The Anunnaki didn't leave permanently. The tablets say so. 4 separate mythological traditions say so. The architectural logic of the underground cities, built for long-term occupation, not short-term hiding, says the builders understood this. They knew the withdrawal was temporary. They built their survival infrastructure around that knowledge, which means the question is not whether the cycle happened. The physical evidence closes that question. The question is what the tablets say about the timing of when it comes back. That calculation is embedded in the astronomical records of the same tablet sequence the AI just read, and the number it produces is the one detail that 3 separate academic institutions have declined to publish. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. When that piece goes up, you need to have seen this one first. I'm Dr. James Mercer. The moment I have more, you'll be the first to know.